Welcome to John Who, the ultimate podcast for fans of doves, slow motion choreography, hyperviolent gunfights, and heartfelt bromances. My name's Daniel, and I'm a huge fan of the epic films of legendary Hong Kong director John Woo. I'm joined by my co-host Drew, a complete newcomer to John Woo's films, and a fellow superfan, Brandon Lim. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
Before we dive into, the topic for this episode, why don't we start with a quick introduction to like what you do and like why you're even here?
I'm here, Daniel, because we crossed paths at it was like an alternative market to Fan Expo. I think it was called Press Play Free Market or something like that, hosted by Silver. It was a bit of a talk. I can't remember what the name was, but Silver Snail every year they host this like free sort of like comic art market expo thing at what was the name of the space?
It's like this like creator space. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it was like right around the corner from like where Fan Expo was taking place. So Brian invited me to table there with a couple other artists, and I think like the theme of that market or expo was sort of had like this like vintage like 80s analog kind of video VHS VCR era kind of vibe to it. So myself and a couple other vendors like Undead Media and Road Trip Vintage, we had a bunch of like VHS and like movie kind of themed stuff. I think you picked up a shirt for me.
This one.
And you can't see this shirt right now on the recording, but it's a design of a Hardboiled, the film that we're talking about today, in fact. And why are you wearing that right now? That's crazy. How did you even get that?
I know, right? You were selling these really cool shirts, not just of like John Woo movies. You had two at the time, but I then realized that you do some really like cool stuff in Toronto related to martial arts.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I went on a long tangent there, actually, talking about how we met specifically. But I host a film screening series here in Toronto at the Review Cinema. It's called Black Belt Cinema, and it's a film series that takes place monthly. Featuring a lot of martial arts cinema, kung fu, Asian action genre fare, and whatnot. And I design a lot of shirts related to film for. I have a sort of like a brand of clothing design called Fatal Stasis, and that's sort of how our worlds cross paths.
You're kind of the Review Cinema for those who don't know, because I know a lot of our the fans of the Asians Represent podcast, which is what John Who is a spinoff of, are American. The Review Cinema is one of Toronto's historic movie theaters.
Yeah, it's the most historic single screen cinema still operating in Toronto, in fact.
I have seen photos of it, and it looks dope, and I hope to visit it sometime.
It's very cool.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, like we just had the facade restored too. It's got a little facelift, so to speak, on the outside of the building. So yeah, things are looking tip top over at the Review Cinema on. It's at 400 Roncesvalles Avenue. Check it out if you're ever in Toronto.
It's super cool, and you run martial arts movies there every month, and you show some like deep cuts too. You show a lot of movies that people might not necessarily have good access to or be able to even see in a theater. So I felt like you were like the perfect guest to have on for this episode of John Who. Not only because you made the shirt that I'm wearing, we did not coordinate this. We're wearing the same shirt.
We both happen to be wearing this shirt. I tend to wear, if possible.
So am I, for sure.
Yeah, I tend to wear a shirt, but also if I'm going on a podcast and I happen to have a shirt that's on theme or brand with that subject, I will wear that shirt. If I went on a podcast talking about Sylvester Stallone, and I was wearing a Rambo 2, First Blood 2, Rambo 2, Rambo. I can't believe I'm getting those names mixed up, but I wore my Rambo shirt to that podcast. So, even though you can't see the shirts we're wearing, just please know that we're all dressed appropriately tonight, listeners.
Let's dive into Hardboiled itself. So that's the movie that we're going to be talking about for this episode of John Who. Just like episode 1, we're going to dive into some background information first. So Hardboiled first released in Hong Kong on April 16th, 1992. This movie stars Chow Yun-fat, That's going to be a thread for many episodes. Chow Yun-fat, Tony Leung, who many, I guess, casual sort of like movie fans may know from Shang-Chi, but this guy's an
That's literally the way
icon.
I know him.
Yeah, we
Yes,
only
I
know him
figured
from Shang-Chi. We don't know him from, In the Mood for Love or,
all the classics.
Chungking Express.
Nope,
Modern
not
Americans.
me.
Only Drew,
Oh
because
yeah, that guy
Drew,
from Shang-Chi, right?
it's Shang-Chi's
Yeah,
dad, the bad guy. Um,
the bad
yeah,
dad.
yeah. So it's got Chow Yun-fat, who people know from Pirates of the Caribbean 3.
Yeah, for sure.
Tony Leung from
That's Chow
Shang-Chi.
Yun-fat. Oh my god. Boom, my
Wait, are you
brain.
serious, Drew? Wait, seriously?
No, I didn't know that.
Oh my
You're
god.
are you? I thought you were actually messing with us, but the
No.
fact that
No,
you're
this
not
is
is actually
I don't know jack shit.
yeah.
wow.
Drew
Okay,
Drew does
Yeah.
does not know a lot about
I don't have
movies.
to feign
Rude.
stupidity. It
Yeah.
comes
Wow.
naturally.
So
Wow.
we've got Chow Yun-fat, Tony Leung, we've got Teresa Mo, Philip Chan, Philip Kwok, and Anthony Wong, all iconic actors starring in this movie. This movie was the story was sort of devised by John Woo alongside Gordon Chan and Barry Wong. The production budget was around 4.5 million US dollars. The domestic box office, I will use the local currency, it was 19.7 million Hong Kong dollars. And the worldwide box office, these numbers are vary. The best I could find was just under 800,000 USD. In the first episode of the John Who podcast, we talked about the measuring the legs of a film. Can't do that with this one because there isn't enough data. So we're going to skip that. And we're going to go right to how you can watch this. And I know this is going to be a much longer discussion because, Brandon, you want to talk about something specifically related to this. Hardboiled is kind of a difficult movie to watch if you aren't in the right regions. In the States, I believe, it's available on Prime Video.
It's also I found it was available on YouTube.
Yes, but not
Yeah.
legit.
Yeah, not legit, but that's where I watched it.
Yeah.
The thing is, like Golden Princess film, like they don't even exist anymore. So having it on YouTube, there's no one that's gonna
Enforce
really
that.
send a cease and desist. Like the company that technically owns it, and we'll get into this in a bit. I mean, they're like a construction company now, so they're not sending their lawyers to get some, YouTube to take down this like rip of like Hardboiled that someone uploaded. That's it's just one of those funny things.
It's why you'll also
Yeah.
find a ton of, if you go on like Amazon or any sort of like online marketplace, you will see a ton of Hardboiled Blu-rays, DVDs. Not all of them are like technically legit, because it's kind of difficult to enforce the, I guess, ownership of this film. But yeah, you could find it on Prime Video legitimately. You could find it on YouTube. There are many DVD printings of Hardboiled, mostly out of print. There is a Criterion DVD also out of print. I happen to have, so I have the Dragon Dynasty DVD of
Oh yeah,
Hardboiled.
I think that's the most like commonly seen one, like
Yeah,
up until
it's the 2-disc one,
Yeah.
and then I've got this one is by Windstar. It's a DVD double feature of Hardboiled and The Killer. These are the two versions that I have. Now I know that Brandon, you wanted to talk a little bit about Shout specifically.
Oh yeah, I mean it's pretty timely that we're having this discussion now. I think it's not even been like a week or two since Variety reported that Shout Studios had acquired the Golden Princess film library, which is this like elusive collection of Hong Kong films featuring like many of these like iconic John Woo titles like The Killer and Hard Boiled and A Better Tomorrow, and also a number of other films from like Choi Hawk and Ringo Lam, Kirk Wong. Just these films that like have so much like status and regard in the international film community that don't have proper like even 2K or 4K releases now today. And a lot of people are like, oh, why doesn't this exist? We've had these past releases. Even Criterion had like a DVD of Hardboiled, but it wasn't really like a proper restoration of the film. It was just whatever kind of beat up print that like they had available then. But one of the reasons we didn't get restorations of these films now. And like even John Woo actually talked about this in an interview with Collider when he was promoting Silent Night. One of the questions they asked him was like, how come there aren't like 4K or 2K restorations of your older films? And John Woo said, well, that company, Golden Princess Films, they don't even exist anymore because, the Hong Kong film industry was obviously not the same, especially after the 1997, handover from, British rule to the Chinese. So the Hong Kong industry for film really changed a lot since then, and that company had to basically sell off its catalog to a construction company essentially. So they didn't want to actually sell the rights to any of like the individual films. They wanted to just sell the whole library, the whole entire thing. They were like, no, we're not interested that you like this film or that film. We want to sell the whole thing for this exorbitant amount because we feel it's worth this much, and it is worth a lot. But somehow Shout Studios has finally, I guess, come up with that number or agreement to get it done, and it's pretty exciting because these films are like just like long overdue for releases like this. It would be an understatement.
Yeah, I really look forward to seeing Hardboiled in 4K.
Yeah, it's
oh my god.
Which is about the body count of that film. Good God.
It's actually technically, I think, 307.
It's 307. It's the eighth highest body count of any movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably at that time when it came out, it might have had the highest, maybe when it came out, or pretty darn close.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned, the handover of Hong Kong from the British to China. I read an interesting article actually on the it's like a short essay on the Criterion website.
Oh, really?
It was actually published in May of 1998 by Barbara Shares, and this kind of actually changed how I viewed Hardboiled. The author basically says that John Woo, because this was his last Hong Kong movie before he moved to the States and started doing American movies. He would later return, but this was his last Hong Kong movie, Drew. And basically what this author was saying is that he is kind of echoing some of his fears and the fears that the public in Hong Kong shared about this sort of future of Hong Kong in this handoff. A lot of people were scared about the future of Hong Kong and its sovereignty basically being stripped away from them. And this was around a time when a lot of folks were trying to see, if they could move to the UK. Tiananmen Square had happened in '89. And so this author in this essay basically described the final scene, and we'll talk about this more later, the hospital scene, as a representation of how a lot of people in Hong Kong felt about, the island. The hospital in this movie, and again, we'll get into it. The final sort of action sequence is set in a hospital. There's this big hostage scenario, and this one of John Woo's most incredible like action sequences of all time. But the hospital is set in this essay to represent an institution that nurtures life, kind of like one's home country. But it's turned into this sort of perilous environment where everybody has to choose whether they want to remain inside and die or escape and live. And I never thought about it from the lens of how Hong Kong folks would have felt at the time when basically the entire nature of their country is being changed.
There's a sense
interesting.
In a sense, maybe they didn't have their freedom before being this like colonized place, but then when you look at China taking over, and especially like the pro democratic protests that happened recently too, is also kind of still an issue there. I don't know. It changes the weight of this film in certain ways. I think a lot of the Hong Kong films from the '90s onwards were really overshadowed by this handover, and it's impossible not to look at these films with that context.
Yeah, absolutely. So wanted to mention that up front. So now we always kind of lead into our discussions on John Woo with the IMDb summary and then Drew's thoughts, because Drew, You watched this movie for the first time yesterday, as of the
I
time of this
actually didn't
recording.
even get a chance to watch it yesterday, so I watched it today. I like the end was like 45 minutes before we started, so I'm
It's
fresh
fresh.
on the woo energy.
Okay,
Like
it's fresh. Okay,
it is
so
so fresh in my brain.
IMDb, the summary of this movie is as such: a tough as nails cop teams up with an undercover agent to shut down a sinister mobster and his crew. So, Drew, you're fresh off of watching this for the first time. Did that summary accurately convey what you experienced as a first time viewer?
I mean, I'm actually glad that I didn't know that summary ahead of time because I did not necessarily like when I started watching the film, I did not peg Tony Leung's character as being an undercover cop. I thought that was going to be like the opposing bad guy, when the film was starting. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't see that coming. Although I did write in my notes, why the roses for Madam, the love interest, and then I was like, Tony Leung question mark, and I was like, is this an out of nowhere call? And I was correct. Let the record show. But I would say that it represents it pretty well. I honestly think that though maybe it's just like when I was watching it, but that undercover cop connection wasn't clear at first. It had to kind of build up a little bit for me to be like, oh, okay, I see. I get where this is going. Um,
They definitely don't make
so
it too obvious at first, especially when
Mhm.
you look at the way like Tony Long treats Chow Yun Fat. He just pistol whips him in that one scene, where he's uh, on one of his cohorts. Like it's the tension is good. Yeah, Chow Yun Fat literally tries to blow his brains out in that one scene, but then has run out of ammo. So it's like they really skirt the lines of that pretty well.
yeah,
Yeah, I think the lines are initially blurred because like Tony slash Alan, um, he kind of doesn't know who he is. He's kind of gone like so deep into being a triad hitman that even he doesn't show any signs of being like a hero or a cop. That's kind of how I read it.
He's definitely struggling with some inner demons for sure.
yeah, for sure.
There's just a couple.
Yeah.
Drew, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like how prominently jazz is featured in this movie.
Oh my god, it never ends. It's constant jazz.
This
Uh,
is yeah.
from the very first scene where he's just tonguing that instrument, and then going for it all the way to the very end. There's just constantly jazz, which I thought was cool.
You know
You
that's
know,
John Woo, and that's John Woo himself, who's in the bar, the guy who Tequila's always talking to. That's John
okay,
Woo.
that's I was because he refers, at least in the translation that I watched, he referred to him as Woo, and I was like, oh, okay, and then I just didn't know that was actually John Woo. But that's cool.
There's a rich history of Hong Kong films that will just sometimes it might just be the translation or it's just the character they're playing. And they're like their character's name is Wu, or Jackie Chan is often just
He's always called
Jackie
Jackie.
in quite a
Yeah.
few of
Oh,
his
really?
films. It's
Okay.
it's not uncommon for the actor's name to just be the same as their characters. Might even just be their first name, not necessarily like their first and last. Yeah, but I love that you guys brought up the jazz soundtrack because it really runs the full. Like this is a jazz positive film, and it makes it all the more better. There's smooth jazz, there's hard jazz, there's like somber jazz. There's like it really. It's a really fucking like the soundtrack just adds to the feels. It's such a vibe heavy film, and so much of that has to do with the soundtrack.
I absolutely love the soundtrack. One thing that I think is really cool, and I will not take credit for realizing this. I actually read it in, pull this up, John Woo the Film's second edition. Um, One thing that Kenneth Hall, the author of this book, points out is that music actually connects all of the heroic characters. So um, the Tequila's ex is the one who receives the roses, and she knows that the messages in the card is it's a coded message, right? So she's familiar with it. The
Are you
captain,
somewhere feeling lonely?
exactly right. And like Pang, the guy who actually inputs it into the
Yeah.
computer,
And
the
he's like,
chief,
yeah,
he knows it as well, and he's a heroic
they
character.
decode it with
Tequila knows
musical
it.
notes.
Yeah. So every
Yeah.
character who is like integral to the heroic element of Hardboiled is in on it. They all understand the value of music. And
And
I
that's the
found that to be
value
really
of, and that's truly the value of music literacy. Am I right, Daniel?
yeah.
So yeah,
So
yeah,
sorry, I was just thinking about
yeah,
that. When
yeah.
you mentioned music literacy, and I was thinking about something completely unrelated to Hardboiled actually, and how music literacy is found in a lot of cool things like the Pokemon card game. There's actually a card for Pokemon called Chatot, and the
Hmm.
art they have there it's like a parrot, and they
Yeah.
have them sitting on these drying lines for laundry, and it's
Hmm.
actually sheet music.
Oh no way.
That's cool.
And if you can read music, it actually is the sound that they make in game.
Oh, that's interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like how John Woo basically takes his love for music and puts it at the forefront of this movie.
I think even
Not
his love
only is it
for
like
jazz, his love for
specifically
jazz,
jazz, yeah,
specifically jazz. You
he,
know,
yeah, and I like how because this would never happen in like a police force now, but like Tequila's like every funeral, I make the music. Like he makes the music for every fallen cop in
yeah,
his precinct.
I also thought that something was interesting about Nope, his name's not Turnip. Tequila.
tequila, turnip,
Turnip, my favorite her hero,
dude.
uh, was that when she was struggling to like decode like the numerical sequence of the notes, you know,
Mhm.
in that first kind of scene with them, he, because he's a musician, he easily does it, but because he, as we kind of see throughout the film, doesn't really pay attention to like what she's thinking or what she likes, you know, he has that kind of like hard-boiled chauvinistic
Yeah,
like kind of way about him. He doesn't notice that it's code for something. Like, why would she even be doing this to begin with? But it highlights the fact that he doesn't really pay attention to what she's doing.
That's interesting. I never thought about it that way.
that's the patriarchy for you, Drew. In a nutshell, that's John Woo.
Is that another movie?
Pulling back the yeah. Well, it's not
So many
about
movies.
it's not about horses. I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way. That's actually super interesting, because I always interpreted Tequila as like, oh, he's this like badass cop who's kind of he's not quite Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry. I kind of see him as Dirty Harry mixed with Toshiro Mifune in like Sanjuro and Yojimbo.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting comparison.
They're both like
Yeah,
suave and sensitive, but
but also like
also
chaotic.
badass.
Yeah, chaotic and badass.
And that's where I kind of
Yeah.
see like the combination of those
Mhm.
characters. It's interesting because like at first I was watching it with some folks, and I've watched it with like my parents and stuff like that. And most people I introduce this movie to call it like a buddy cop movie.
I have
That's-
that written down in my notes.
Well, I think it's because there's John Woo's films are quite known for showcasing the theme of brotherhood and brotherly love, honor, loyalty, code. These things are something that shine through. John Woo is not shy to explore that dynamic in his films.
I think what made
Yeah.
this one different, at least to me, is that
Yeah,
when you think of buddy cop films, a lot of people think of like Rush Hour and like Lethal Weapon
yeah,
and those Western buddy cop movies. The protagonists are put together, by their profession, right? They're
Yeah.
partners, right? And the audience is aware of the fact that there is this thing that binds them together. But in Hardboiled, Tequila spends most of the movie unaware that
exactly. So,
Tony
yeah.
is even a cop.
So how can it be a buddy cop film?
Exactly.
I would love to see this film, or at least a trailer for it, recut. Where like they change the music and it's just like Hard Boiled, but if it was like an American buddy cop film, we should try to do that just for fun.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
I feel like they would just they wouldn't use they wouldn't use the first 40% of the movie.
you could cut a lot out, actually. Yeah,
They would cut a lot out because
Yeah.
there are some comedic moments, but Chow Yun-fat and Tony Leung, their characters never
Yeah.
interact in the presence of other people. It's always in secret. It's like on the boat, or they've got their guns to each other's throats, but they're shrouded by smoke. Or, they don't even really interact in the end, right? Because it's like, oh, you think he's dead, but they've actually like burned his personnel record so he can, start fresh. So
Mhm.
you never actually see them be buddies. They're only ever interacting privately
Yeah,
with one
in these
another.
like life or death moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only noticed. So when I wrote, I did not expect the buddy cop plot twist. I wrote that during the hospital scene, like at the beginning of the hospital, where they're both in there and they're trying to save Sui, the
Yeah,
informant.
yeah.
Foxy.
Foxy,
They call him Foxy.
Sure, Foxy. Um, so they're trying to save him, and in that lull, in that calm, they kind of start joking with each other, and I was like, "This is the first time in an hour and 15 minutes that we've had like an attempt at comedy." So I was really like thrown off, by it.
John Woo has actually directed like a number of comedies throughout his career, especially like early on before he became like known. Well, even when he started doing like Heroic Bloodshed, he did some comedies in between before that. So it's
Once
definitely
a Thief is a comedy,
Once
isn't
a
it?
Thief actually does. I arguably is one of his most comedic ones.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I that's a great example of him going for the comedy thing.
Yeah.
For
Even
sure.
even the poster of it, it's just like they're walking on the road.
It's hilarious.
It doesn't look like
Yeah.
the type of movie you'd think John Woo would make.
Yeah, but at least to like my recollection of Hard Boiled, which hopefully is pretty good. I just stopped watching it. uh, I don't really remember any like particularly comedic things, and maybe there was comedy bits that were just lost in translation that I just didn't pick up on or whatever. But it was just like a not even jarring, just slightly startling to be like, oh, this suddenly feels like a buddy cop uh, uh, scene. Interesting.
I think those are pretty crucial for just balancing out the like oppressive, like intense violence of like all these explosions and gunshots happening around like hospital patients, like babies, and like the sick and injured. Like it's actually quite bleak. Yet you have these like moments of like, oh, this baby's pissing all over Chow Yun-fat and putting out this fire. It's like
That was great.
so it's and John Woo is certainly like an you could describe as an earnest director. Like it's like there is destruction and mayhem and chaos, but it is also grounded by a lot of heart and conviction and emotion, which is I think what makes these movies so just loud, bombastic, but like sincere and moving.
Yeah, I think Hardboiled is my favorite John Woo movie. I know it's many people's favorite John Woo movie. Um, it is. I don't think I'm not sure if it's the movie that got me into his work, but I find that it is the pinnacle of his ability to execute chaos, but with precision.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is peak John Woo, right? Because he follows up with a bunch of hit and misses in Hollywood. Obviously, like Face Off is his Western masterpiece. Um, but then he's got some duds in the West. Even in from his Hong Kong movies, a lot of people don't actually know about his wuxia stuff. A lot of people don't actually know that John Woo did martial arts movies before he did the Hong Kong like bloodshed opera stuff.
Yeah, and his mentor was Chang Che, who was like the famous director for Shaw Brothers. He directed Enter the 36th Chamber of Shaolin and countless other films. And like you couldn't have had a mentor with like a higher stature in that regard. So John Woo, I think learned from the best, like truly, and his earlier wuxia films are very much worth checking out, especially you were talking about Last Hurrah, for Chivalry, which I'm not sure if I'm allowed to reveal that you guys are doing that episode.
No, it's fine. We talk about it all the time.
You did? Okay, okay, cool. So yeah, that one especially is a huge love letter to his mentor Chang Che. So you definitely check that one out. And Hand of Death is another good one too, which is actually you'll see really small parts from Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung. Arrow put out releases of it actually, and it's you can stream it on their channel too. So yeah, definitely check out some of John Woo's earlier wuxia stuff. You'll see so many of these themes, like even like the brotherly love and you know a lot of hallmarks of his stuff. You can see even his earlier films. Like I think Last Hurrah is from what 1979 or
Something like that.
which was kind of like those films actually were kind of falling out of fashion even within Hong Kong and China because they were moving on to the more hand to hand kind of stuff like in that post like Enter the Dragon stuff like the sword play stuff was kind of seen as very regal and dramatic and kind of antiquated by that point. So the fact that John Woo was still kind of leaning into that genre showed that I think he was kind of trying to pay tribute to that era in the way that like Sam Peckinpah did with like the Wild Bunch, which is often seen as like kind of almost like the death of the Western genre, at least a certain era of it at the time. And John Woo being very influenced by Peckinpah. You can see a lot of that actually in Hardboiled as well. There's a lot of Western tropes in this film constantly. It's pretty remarkable.
I also think so. I think within the past year, Drew has seen me kind of descend into this sort of obsession with wuxia.
Yeah.
I know, Brendan. I don't know if I ever
sure.
told you this, but I'm designing a tabletop RPG.
Oh.
That's inspired by wuxia.
Oh my god, that's really really cool.
And the cover that I actually had commissioned of the book was actually inspired by the Criterion cover of Last Hurrah for Chivalry. So I've done like a deep dive into
which has like
wuxia.
that kind of watercolor.
It's got that watercolored look, right?
Oh,
I'll send you the
wow.
link afterwards. But I've been
Yeah.
watching like a ton of different wuxia movies, and the one thing that I've come to realize, so I have this little like club, and every Sunday we get together and we watch wuxia.
Hey, you should send me an invite, Daniel.
I will actually after this. We don't always watch wuxia, but
No.
we've recently watched like Twilight of the Warriors, best action movie of 2024. So
Walled
good.
In.
Yeah, incredible.
I regret not trying to book that at review.
If that was at review, I would instantly be there.
Well, I mean, maybe it's not too late. Actually, it's in their catalog. I think I could get it for the
We
future.
should do that. We watched like New Dragon Gate Inn, Dragon Inn.
Dragon
Come
Inn,
Bring With Me.
I screened that a couple years ago. That
movie's incredible.
It's such a perfect film. Yeah, I love it so much.
Final Master, just the movie called Dragon or Wuxia with Donnie Yen.
Mm-hmm.
Sword of the Stranger. It's an animated movie, but I love that one.
Oh.
And we watched Sakura actually recently. That's another Donnie Yen one. And one thing that I've kind of realized watching a lot of wuxia movies and then watching a lot of John Woo's blood opera movies is that thematically they're very similar. If you watch like a wuxia movie or engage with wuxia fiction, they're always characters who kind of act within the martial arts world, right? The Jianghu, that's that like world of martial artists, but also scoundrels and thieves. And those are kind of core to John Woo's work, right? They're always characters who are acting against what is the status quo, the established world of the court, the Miaotang, which is like the government, the courtly world, the military world. Wuxia characters are always martial artists. They're disciples of temples. They are bandits, outlaws, assassins. And that's what you see in John Woo's stuff, right? Even with Hardboiled, which is a movie that he intentionally made about the police because he had been doing so many gangster movies. Tequila and I guess Tony or Alan /Alan, they're all characters who kind of sit outside of the established order of the Hong Kong police, right? Tequila is kind of this rogue, and Alan is also like a hitman who's kind of like losing his identity. But there is a line where Tequila says, it's not clear whether we're cops or thieves, which kind of points to this sort of like either corruption that he perceives or this sense that he doesn't actually belong or actually feels like he's expendable, which is really different from a lot of other earlier John Woo movies where the heroes are not quite, they're not necessarily portrayed as expendable within the systems that they operate in.
I really like that you bring that up, because yes, these characters are sort of like they do operate within the law, but at the same time, like Tony Leung is like literally executing people in some of these scenes, so it's like they're kind of above the law in certain ways, and they do have a moral compass, and they have a code, and that does get compromised in a number of ways, especially for Tony Leung. You know, you see there's that scene when he like basically like executes all his like former bosses because he just has to do that to go after the bigger fish, you know, which is Anthony Wong. And then he also accidentally kills one of his own in the final shootout in that hospital scene. And that's just, you know, it's this thing that just happens in the heat of the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it, that kind of realization of the parallels with like sort of the wuxia genre tropes and these cop and gangster movies is something that Drew you're gonna see a lot actually as we watch more
Cool.
of them. I know like you know about wuxia too because you worked with me on Wandering Blades.
Yeah. In wuxia, there's quite a lot. I haven't seen as much wuxia material as you, but like there's quite a common like melodramatic blade binding that happens, right? Where the opponents press their blades together, or in some way grapple with one another and hold each other in some way, that kind of freezes the scene, and then there's words exchanged and shit like that. I kind of see that a lot of that in John Woo's work, where it always ends up with the two dudes pressing their guns at each other, and it happens multiple times in this film. It happened in Face Off, where there's just always that evolution of the blade bind, but it's with guns, where we both have drawn on each other, and there's a frozen moment because no one knows who's going to shoot first, and there's always some exchange of information, even if it's like subtle and nonverbal. There's always an exchange between the two, and I thought that was cool to see. I had noted that about like, oh, this is very similar to blade binds in cinema.
That's because I think John Woo basically treats guns as swords.
I would say
Yeah.
that's an accurate statement for sure.
That's why they don't reload.
Yeah, I noted that too.
Right, but reloads really only happen during those dramatic pauses. That might happen when you have that clash of swords, and then you back off, and then you're kind of standing there in your stances. That's when you're reloading, right? Because everything that John Woo does is so tied into the music. Gunfire is basically, these are literal beats that happen during the scene. Like every time a gun is fired, it's like the clashing of swords, right? Even in that tea house scene, you see all of these other cops who survive the scene, they get shot up, right? But like at the beginning, one of Tequila's like colleagues, he gets kneecapped and then he's still running, right? But I think that is very much like the way you watch a sword fight where people are getting nicked. They're getting like cut up, but they're still fighting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the point where I realized I'm like, oh, guns are swords. Right. And it's also really dramatic on how they like draw their guns. It's kind of like how they, there's that close up shot of you drawing your sword.
Sure.
Very much like that.
Yeah. It's funny. This is unrelated, but I just screened Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai recently.
That movie is so good.
So good. And the way that like, Ghost Dog like holsters and unholsters his gun is very much like, he swings it around and like holsters it, and it's very much like he's putting away a sword. And so there's definitely a lot of moments where like they're practically like posing with these guns in these like really impressive balletic like ways. It's incredible to see.
Drew, what did you think of the action in Hardboiled compared to like Face Off? Because that's your only John Woo sort of point of reference.
I feel like the action scenes were way longer. Like each individual action scene, it just felt, or maybe there was just a higher volume of them. I'm not sure how to parse that difference, but I thought that they were really good. They were, how to word it. It felt way more chaotic in a sense, where there's just a lot more larger scale things happening. Like I'm reminded of like in Face Off, like there's a shootout in the prison, and then there's the shootout like at the hideout, the sort of mansion loft hideout. But those felt fairly confined in their like liminal spaces that they were in, whereas it felt like there was just way more shit happening constantly. There's just dudes flying everywhere, and there's motorcycles,
Yeah,
and there's how many times can we fit in the whole like side jump,
that's a signature move. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
throwing through the air with two pistols, guns ablazing, slow motion. That's the signature hallmark wooism.
Yeah.
but like
The sliding
especially
down the staircase at the
Sliding down
beginning.
the staircase. Yeah,
oh yeah,
that was a pretty iconic move. Yeah.
but like in the warehouse scene, the warehouse scene was really memorable to me, the warehouse raid, because there's just so much chaos. There's just there are little fireworks going off everywhere. There's just ampules of blood being spilled,
Well,
constantly.
yeah, I mean, and the evolution of that scene is crazy too, because at first, like, Tony Long or like Alan is forced to do this like betrayal of his former boss, and then he shows up. They have to execute all his former like guys that he worked with, and then
Yeah.
after that, fucking Chow Yun Fat comes in through the roof, like like tactical. It's a wild setup.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that Tony Leung had in reality probably had all of like 3 minutes to think about portraying his 5 year long boss.
Yeah, they shot up this whole factory. It's nuts. It's like I felt bad for the guys that worked here, man. They didn't sign up for this. I feel like, it's like
Yeah, the guy who's
these
just
guys.
welding nothing up
Yeah,
on the scaffolds. I noticed that they're just welding sparks everywhere, and I'm
yeah.
like, you're
These
not
guys
doing
are
anything.
just
You're like, you're
workers. These guys are just working on cars, man. These guys came in. They're just like shooting these guys. Well, some of these guys are jacked up too. But man, it's crazy. They've got grenades and like it's nuts, man. Oh,
Yeah, I
this
was
is
I watched it on I watched it yesterday with a bunch of our other friends. Drew, like Marcus and Isaac.
yeah,
And when we got to the warehouse scene, Marcus said, "Damn, Chow Yun Fat is strapped."
yeah. He
And
is
yeah,
literally strapped.
he's strapped. And then I said, because it was approaching the scene when he flies, and he was like, he's also literally strapped in. And then he
Yeah,
swings in
swings
with that
down. Yeah, yeah.
MP5 and just lays waste to
Well,
everyone.
one of the great things about this scene is like while all this stuff is playing out, for so much of it, Chow Yun Fat is just lurking in the background. No one even knows he's there, and he's just slowly like loading his like shotgun like case by case, and just surveilling the whole situation. He's like chosen like the best possible point of entry to get the jump on all these guys. It's really masterful.
Yeah, I love the scene
Yeah.
when he's loading the shells one by
Yeah.
one into the
That's
shotgun.
one of my that's
it's like chilling.
it is chilling. Yeah.
And then when he lands after like using his submachine gun, and he draws the shotgun like
Oh.
a sword.
Yeah, yeah. He does that amazing like spin around too, and then like unholsters the shotgun and oh fuck, just
It's so good, and
yeah.
I really love how, because like shotguns are, when people think of John Woo movies, they think of pistols, specifically the Beretta 92. They think of that pistol.
He pulled out my Beretta.
But
Yeah.
Hardboiled very prominently features shotguns,
Mhm.
very
A lot
very
of
prominently,
shotguns.
and I want to talk more about like the use of guns and how shotguns in particular, I guess with every other firearm too, are portrayed, right? Because one thing that everybody who I was watching it noticed was that these shotguns are really, really overpowered.
Every single bullet in this film is overpowered. Like anytime a bullet fires off, not only does it like shoot something, but it explodes into like all these like crazy pyrotechnic like pieces. Everything is so explosive. Everything
Hmm.
explodes. Anything that gets shot with a bullet in this explodes. There's sparks are flying constantly. Like it's really quite it's a symphony of just like blasts and sparks and just like flames. It's incredible.
Yeah, I don't know what was loaded into that shotgun during the warehouse raid, but it I don't know if it was like dragon's breath or some shit because everything it shot lit on fire. Like,
Yeah, I think like the pyrotechnics like laws in Hong Kong might have been different than North American ones. I don't know. They got away with some pretty amazing stuff like that. Yeah,
They had
yeah.
they had Danny McBride's character from Tropic Thunder there,
Oh yeah.
way back in the '90s, just blowing shit up. What I think was really interesting about the shotguns is that, particularly for like the slow motion close ups when he shoots somebody, you see the giant squib go off in their chest,
Oh yeah.
right? So it's as if they got hit with a slug, but then the entire like frame around them also blows up. So you get this like interesting explosion that
Hmm.
frames one guy getting his chest completely annihilated by a
Wow.
shotgun.
Wow.
Um, I think the way John Woo kind of like does not think about guns from of a real from a realistic perspective actually is his it makes his action sequences more entertaining, right? If you compare his action sequences to like, a Chaz Stahelski, David Leitch sort of thing with John Wick.
And again, this goes back to the wuxia, right? Like these wuxia characters actually can't do all these fantastical feats of skill with their swords and their attacks. Like this is like it's elevated and it's in the realm of like you know fantastical almost. Like but yet it is still grounded in this like gritty world of consequences.
That's what makes wuxia really interesting, because if you
Yeah.
look at the early wuxia movies like, Dragon Inn or Come Drink with Me,
Yeah.
um, they they have they can kind of leap really high. They have superhuman reflexes, superhuman senses, and durability.
Yeah.
But it's not like a lot of the Shinsha movies where they're straight up shooting fireballs or cultivating immortality. Uh, John Woo's movies are kind of like the grounded 60s and 70s wuxia movies where the protagonists appear superhuman, but there is nothing superhuman about the world that they are actually inhabiting.
Yeah. Well, I think because a lot of wuxia films started to become like bloodier, and so that these
Yes.
characters weren't fully invincible. If you got hit, slashed by a sword, you were cut and you could die. Like it was less like yeah, and films were also transitioning to more like stuff like Jimmy Wong Yu's like the Chinese Boxer was one of the first really popular like films that was like there was no weapons in it. It was all hand to hand stuff, but yet it was like bloody, like they were gouging eyes and like like all kinds of like stuff we hadn't really seen in wuxia for a while. And that's really when the trends started to change more into like the stuff that we would see. Well, that would eventually lead to like the Jackie Chan, Yuen Biao, Sammo Hung stuff, which was less swords and more fists and acrobatics and whatnot.
God, if only we had a podcast about Jackie Chan. Because Drew, I want you to watch Wheels on Meals or any of the Jackie Chan fight scenes with Benny the Jet.
Oh yeah,
Incredible.
Dragons
Jackie,
Forever.
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Salut.
Well, we could do a spin-off of John Woo and it'd just be about Jackie Chan. I actually feel a little bit, I don't know, I have really mixed feelings about Jackie Chan now that he's kind of turned against Hong Kong. Um,
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about these films is the way that Hong Kong used to. I mean, they used to romanticize the Hong Kong police, especially in these films. Then until I would say after the protests and trying to protest like the extradition laws that China was trying to impose on Hong Kong's, who should have like autonomy and stuff, and the way they felt about the police drastically changed after that. So, and especially with things that were said by not just Jackie Chan or Donnie Yen about those so-called riots, when really uh, it was disappointing to see all these people that played these cops that they would idolize back then actually be arresting and brutalizing and oppressing the Hong Kong population, who was just trying to stand up for its autonomy and rights and agency, yeah. So the image of the Hong Kong cop is not as something that is revered and romanticized as much, I would say, in cinema. Well, at least you still get movies like action films
Uh,
and stuff like that that will do that,
Raging
but like,
Fire, like Raging Fire, the
yeah,
Donnie Yen
yeah.
movie that just came out ish,
There's also I
recent-ish.
just did you see The Prosecutor?
I haven't seen it yet.
I
I haven't seen
just
it yet.
saw it. I've actually was like maybe trying to screen it for review, but I don't know if it's going to happen. But I did see it when I was playing at Cineplex, and it's actually pretty good. Yeah, I would check it out. I don't know if it's like available to stream yet, but
I'll
I,
find it.
you'll find it. You'll
I'll
find it.
find it. I'll find it.
But yeah, he
Um,
literally plays a prosecutor. Um, but like a former, police, like man, like
it's a very
turned
Donnie Yen
prosecutor.
character, and
the
Yeah,
the
yeah.
punching prosecutor, yeah.
I was
He's the
gonna make a
prosecutor that punches away, his
punching
problems that he can't
prosecutor
solve.
could have totally been a westernized title for a Wuxia movie.
They should
Hundred
call it
percent,
that. Yeah, punching prosecutor.
totally
Sorry.
could have been. Um, I wanted to circle back to something that you said earlier, Drew, when you were kind of comparing Hard Boiled to Face Off. The one big difference between at least those two movies for like the casual viewer is actually the way it's shot. So if you watch like martial arts movies from like the 60s and 70s and 80s, like the action is very, very clear. Like we were talking about Jackie Chan and stuff. We were talking, and we talked about Donnie Yen, and this is also why Ip Man was so impressive for a lot of like casual viewers, is that the action is super clear. Like there are no quick
Hmm.
cuts. Everything is in frame for you to see. And that's really cool when you're watching hand-to-hand combat. It's even more sort of exhilarating when you're watching gunfights.
And if you listen to the crew, like especially the American crew that like worked on films like Face Off, they there's behind the scenes footage of them talking about how yeah, normally when we shoot a scene where there's a squib going off or an explosion or anything like that, we have maybe two or three shots of it. With John, we've got 6 to 8 different angles that we have to set up, and like we're doing so much more coverage than we're normally used to. But for John, this is just his way of working, and it actually was quite difficult for the studios to justify, because obviously this would also mean you know bigger budget and expenses and stuff like that, and so it was tough. Like he also had problems with Hard Target trying to do the things that he wanted to, and Sam Raimi famously fought for him to be able to like still see his vision out without Jean-Claude Van Damme, and the studios really changing and tampering the film that he wanted to make with Hard Target. So yeah,
Ooh, I'm glad you mentioned Hard
yeah.
Target because that's actually a piece of trivia that I had for Hard Boiled. So for every episode of John Who, we always do some trivia. Um, I'm very curious to see if anything that I bring up is new to you, Brandon. You already mentioned the 307 on-screen body count. So as of at least 2024, Hardboiled is tied for the 8th highest on-screen body count in all of cinema with 307. It's actually tied with Titanic.
Oh my
Um,
god.
yeah, it's tied with. So the amount of people
Also
who
famous for its
die,
gunfights.
yeah, right. The amount of people who die on screen in Titanic. Just put this into perspective, listener or viewer. The amount of people who die on screen in the Titanic movie is the same as the amount of people who get killed in Hardboiled. Um,
Okay.
Now, number one is actually Return of the King. There's 836 on-screen deaths in Return of the
Oh,
King.
okay, right. I guess Meta Workshop was busy rendering all those people
Yeah,
getting
all the
killed.
orcs getting killed and stuff in
I
CG.
guess
But
those orcs do count too. Yeah.
Hardboiled is like an hour shorter than Titanic, which really
The body count in
is wild.
Hardboiled is truly impressive. It's just it's on a scale that had never been I think achieved at that point in cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Okay, so I had that as a piece of trivia, but I've got a couple of others. One of them we already spoiled. I was going to talk about, like, did you know that there's a sequel to Hardboiled, and it's called Stranglehold. It's a
Oh
video game.
yeah.
Um,
I was
so
around when
good.
I remember that game coming out and being like, there's a video game that's like a sequel to Hardboiled, produced by John Woo, and the character. And I'm just like, what? And it had this like whole bullet time thing, and like it was a cool time to be a fan of like those kinds of films and video games growing up. I will say that much for sure. Stranglehold.
This is my original copy of the
That's
collector's edition.
oh wow, I'm jealous. I
it's
wonder.
it's it's like holographic and everything.
I don't even know
Um,
if I still have a copy. I might have gotten rid of it.
it's I believe the PS3 version actually came with you could watch the entire movie on
It
the
was
PS3 version.
that's you are
That's how some people
100% right.
actually
I think it
encountered
was
it.
like in like 400 480p basically, and it was like pretty like they said it was like
Potato.
yeah. So that's true. It was like you could actually watch the movie Hardboiled on the disc, which is pretty cool.
But
Um,
Stranglehold is actually really accessible. You could find it on GOG for as low as $3 Canadian for the PC
wow.
version of that game.
Okay,
As of the time of recording, it's actually $2.79 Canadian.
that's a good
Um,
deal.
it's a very good
Well,
deal.
that's not
Uh,
the case with some of the DVDs and Blu-rays.
oh my god, the
I
Criterion DVD is it's like several $100s.
Yeah, I do wonder if the value is going to go down after these new restorations come out, or if it's going to go up because more interest will be, directed on the films. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah,
Do you? I'm assuming you shop at Vinegar Syndrome, right?
oh for sure, yeah.
Did you see the original Hardboiled poster they have?
Yeah, I have seen that there actually. Yeah,
It's
I was
two hundred
looking at it the other
dollars.
day. Yeah, it's how much?
It's $200.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it's worth it.
I want it so bad.
Yeah, don't
I
we
want
all?
it so bad.
Well, this
Um,
is this is why I designed a T-shirt of it as opposed to paying $200 to buy a cool poster of it online. I
yeah,
would like
when I wear out this shirt
um,
eventually, I'll just turn it.
yeah.
I'll just frame it or something.
There's some really
Um,
cool Thai poster versions of Hardboiled you should check out. There's a account called Thai Poster Bliss, and you will see like some genre movies on there. Sometimes it's pretty
I'm
rad.
gonna look that up after.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's go to trivia. So I have two pieces of trivia that I actually did not know.
Okay.
So the first one. So the gunman that Tequila executes at the end of the tea house, when Tequila's covered in flour, he spits the toothpick out and then he blows
Yeah,
his brains out and he's covered. So
yeah.
that's Jun Kunimura, and he's a Japanese actor who's actually in both Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. That guy
Drew, I'm
is.
assuming you haven't seen Kill Bill.
I couldn't tell you anything about Kill Bill. I know it exists, but that's about it.
My God.
Yeah,
I'm assuming Bill gets fucking killed.
that guy is in a lot of Japanese films, and he's often playing a yakuza character
Yeah.
most of the time.
So the main
Yeah.
main guy who has a submachine gun in the tea fight is a
Yeah.
Japanese actor who's been in a lot of iconic roles, but he was in Kill Bill.
Yeah.
He gets killed by Lucy Liu and she holds
Yeah,
up
yeah,
his head.
totally. He does not like the
Um,
fact that Lucy Liu is half American or half white.
Drew,
Or, no,
we could
sorry, half
separately
Chinese, half Chinese.
half Chinese.
Half Chinese.
Uh,
My bad, my bad.
Drew, we could separately watch Kill Bill because I think you'll like it.
Okay.
Um,
Hell yeah.
Okay, so this is another one. This kind of blew my mind. But Stephen Tung, the actor who plays Foxy, the informant, he used to be the head of the Hong Kong Stuntmen Association, and he discovered Scott Adkins.
What?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Drew, you
that's
got to Drew, you got to know who
crazy.
Scott Adkins is.
Yeah, he's in
Okay.
It Man, right?
He's in Ip Man 4. Yeah, he's in Ip
Yeah,
Man 4. He's in
among
John
other
Woo 4.
things.
I
Yeah, he's
was
in
not
Jungle.
expecting you to draw. I was honestly, I thought you were going to say something that I already knew. Like, oh, how many weapons were used in this film? How many different kinds of weapons, which I know is like around 200, because they had to import a bunch of them from England, and
Yep,
had
they
to
imported
go
a
through
ton.
customs. But I didn't realize that guy discovered Scott Adkins. I knew Scott Adkins got his start like in a lot of Hong Kong films from that period. Like I think he's in like Black Mass 2, City
He
of Masks,
actually
and like
got Scott Adkins his first role in Extreme Challenge in 2001.
dude.
So
Okay, that
less
is
than
some
a decade
that is
after
some
Hardboiled came out.
that's good trivia, man. That's interesting to see that lineage go from. Oh wow, okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like, literally after that, he went to work on Accidental Spy with Jackie Chan,
Right. Oh,
2001.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
So the guy who plays the informant Foxy discovered Scott Adkins,
That's
which
so
was
cool.
mind blowing to me.
That's okay. That you just blew my mind too, actually, Daniel. Damn, Daniel.
Yes.
Damn,
I was
Daniel.
actually really worried that I wouldn't find something that
Yeah.
you wouldn't know. Um,
No, that's something I didn't know that, dude. That was a fucking juicy bit of trivia you just dropped on me, brother.
hell yeah. And this one is less of a piece of trivia and more of like an
Yeah.
interesting observation about the movie.
Have you ever
But
watched Scott Adkins' YouTube show, The Art of Action, that he
all the
started
time,
during? Oh my god.
subscriber. I actually, if
Yeah.
folks want to know more about Scott Adkins, I have a little blog called Musings of the Enthusiast. It's just it's danielhquan.substack.com. And I wrote an article called The Undisputed King of Direct-to-Video
Oh
Action
man.
Cinema. And I did a whole deep dive
Yeah,
into
yeah.
Scott
I mean,
Adkins.
he's like the only DTV guy still going in a sense, like or at least like the successor to that, like um yeah, I love like that show also during, that he started during the pandemic was like the perfect like thing, like to like he got so many good guests,
He
uh
he Drew, you've definitely seen him and stuff. Like Drew, have
Oh
you
yeah,
seen
yeah.
you've seen Zero Dark 30, right?
No,
Oh, really? I
oh
thought
my
you
god,
might.
no.
is he in Zero Dark 30?
Yes, Zero Dark 30 is one of his big Hollywood movies. He was one of the operators
Oh,
in Zero
crazy.
Dark 30
What?
because Scott Adkins was he was Ryan Reynolds' stunt double in X-Men Origins Wolverine. He was in
Yeah,
Zero
that's
Dark 30. He was
totally.
in
There's
the
all that amazing footage of him doing all those crazy
crazy
like
stunts.
stuff.
He was in one of the highest grossing Chinese action movies of all time, Wolf Warrior,
Wolf Warrior.
opposite
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Wu
with
Jing.
Wu Jing.
Incredible
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
He's in Ip Man 4, obviously, John Wick 4. He was in a movie with Jamie Foxx called The Day Shift. He played this Russian vampire hunter. He had incredible action scenes in that movie. Um, and then, of course, he has
Okay.
like he plays Boyka.
And Undisputed 2.
Yeah,
Like and
he's
then
jacked.
Undisputed 3. Man, like Boyka is I think arguably like his probably his most
Iconic.
iconic role. Just what a beast. It's like just
Yeah. You
and
could
the
do an
character arc.
entire
The arc of that character too
oh
is so good, like um
Drew, afterwards you should look up Boyka. He's just this like Russian prison fighter, and
yeah.
Scott Adkins is ripped as fuck and tatted up,
Yeah.
and some of the best action scenes
Well,
you'll
he
ever
also
see.
had he said in interviews too that he felt that he really needed to bulk up on that one uh, because in contrast to like Michael Jai White, like
Spawn.
he needed to seem like someone that could actually like go toe to toe with him in a fight. How else could it be believable, Like so he
Hmm.
had to put on some weight for that that you definitely won't have seen in like roles since then. That yeah.
Scott Adkins and Michael Jai White are two actors who I don't people don't give enough credit to. They really don't.
There's a new film that just came out on Tubi, I believe today, and it's called Sunset Superman, and it stars Michael Jai White, and it's written by I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he's one of the owners of Little Ghost Books, this bookstore on Dundas West that's like a horror themed bookstore. And he co-wrote this film or wrote this film, and it just came out today, and I'm told it's actually quite good. I don't
Huh.
know too much about it, but Michael J. White is in it, and it's now available on Tubi. It's called Sunset Superman. I'm going to actually probably watch it later tonight.
I'm gonna have to
But
watch this too, especially if it's got that local connection.
it's got a local connection. Yeah, it's about a drunk army ranger must fight off the vicious robbers who plan to loot the cabin belonging to his sweet, oblivious grandmother.
That's
um,
it's kind of got similar vibes to I know one of your favorite movies, Drew, Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
yeah.
yo, that movie fucking slaps hard.
But anyways, we're running out of time. We
Oh yeah,
gotta
yeah.
wrap up with we've got two more segments. The first one is the one that Drew named. It's the highs, the woes, and the oh no's. So we're gonna
Okay.
start with you, Drew, because you're the one who this was your first time ever watching Hardboiled. What did you love? What did you like? And what did you hate? This is also so
I
I can
should have
give
written
Brandon
these
some time
down.
to think too.
I should have written these down. I think my favorite part was the warehouse raid.
Okay, so that's the thing you
I just
loved
really
most.
loved the warehouse raid.
Was it
It
was it
was
just
just
the action? Was it
it's
just
just the
like
action of it. It was the wide open shots and like just
Mhm.
the sheer chaos of it, and dudes doing motorcycle stunts while being lit on fire, and just all sorts of stuff. Because I don't want to just say the action in general. I want to be like specific, like what is like a scene that I really really liked in particular. So definitely the warehouse raid.
I
I liked
Okay,
the
keep going.
chemistry between Chow Yun Fat and Tony Leung a lot. I thought that that was really good. Like I did like, even though it was kind of like not jarring, but like even though it was kind of out of the blue, I actually really liked the hospital scene where they're kind of joking around with each other, and Chow Yun Fat's trying to get out of Tony Leung, like, where, what year did you go to Cop Academy? Like, who taught you? Who taught you to be this stubborn? I actually really liked that. The oh no, the thing that I didn't like about the movie, or I just like the least, which I did really like the film, was it was maybe just a tad too long, in that I felt like there were moments where it kind of dragged on, with like long shots of not much at all. And maybe it's just my ADHD rattled brain that's like, all right, I just had like a dopamine shot of action. I need more. I need more, but yeah, I think that the movie was just a little too long in my opinion.
I
Okay,
mean,
so interesting.
the final like hospital scene is like almost like an hour of the film. Like it's
Yeah.
when it gets to the final set piece, it's just like this is just the next act. Really, it's a big, grandiose film. I mean, it's. I think it drags on in the sense that like you feel almost like kind of depleted by how engaging and explosive this film is. It really it takes a lot out of you with its intensity and explosiveness. Like
Yeah, I noticed probably around minute 45, don't quote me on that, but kind of around the 45-minute mark, I was like, "Oh my god, we have another hour and 15 minutes left. There's so much more." Like
You're gonna
like
hate
it
Red Cliff then. That movie's long as fuck. I think that's John Woo's
No,
longest
it's
movie.
not a
It's a
problem with how
two-parter.
long the film was. I think it was partially due to like me thinking that the movie is going one way, with Tony Leung being the bad guy,
Mm.
and then it sort of changes, it shifts, and I go, and I really liked that shift as I went, oh, he's undercover, like, oh, he's actually not necessarily the bad guy in this story. But it kind of, maybe in my brain, it just kind of caused like a story reset, like the story reset with in my brain from that moment. So it felt like I watched two movies: the first 45 minutes and the last hour and 15.
That's really interesting. I never thought of it that way, and I guess because I've seen this movie so many times, I just kind of like I'm expecting it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't label this as a bad thing, it's just my kind of initial reaction. And I remember thinking that some parts kind of drug a little bit on.
Okay,
Um,
yeah,
but I
that's
really
fair.
liked it anyways.
So you loved the warehouse scene in particular. You
Yeah.
liked the chemistry between the leads, and you hated the length.
Yeah, hate's a strong word, but when we got to pick one, we got to pick one.
Okay. What about you, Brandon? What did you love most about the movie? What is one thing in particular that you liked? And then what did you hate, if any?
Um, I guess I will start off with it. Love. I mean, there's a lot to love in this film. I will say just I just have to say Tony Leung Chiu-Wai's performance in itself, I just happen to just love so much. Like especially just that scene where he's just shot his like fallen like brethren, and turns around and has to like look at Anthony Wong in the face and like act like cool and stuff, and then but you see this like strong look on his face, but then he totally crumbles the moment he like walks past his gaze, and then in that moment like you see it's just devastating performance that is almost like, yeah, it's liminal, because it's like, is he doing good work, or is he like just as bad as these guys? That torn performance is really amazing. So I'd say just like the performances themselves are what I really love in this film, between Tony Leung and Chow Yun Fat. Just incredible performances. So what I like about this film, I guess, is I just think it's impressive on, if anything, objectively, a technical level. Like, in terms of technical execution, like right down to like, the props, the explosions, the pyrotechnics, the stunts, the choreography, the camera setups. I just love how technically impressive this film is, and it really is John Woo just showing. It's like a masterclass. He's really did this film to really show what he was capable of, as he was, about to enter, the like Hollywood, and he would utilize a lot of the techniques we see on display here. Again, especially like, the scene where Tony Leung and Mad Dog are dueling against each other in the hospital, going through the windows. We see that replayed in Hard Target with Jean-Claude Van Damme, in like a very similar fashion, and he gets to do it in his own way, but like it's part of the wheelhouse that we come to expect and enjoy. It's like a trademark, a staple, and it's a signature move, a signature woo, so to speak.
Hell yeah.
I just love that this film it has just that John Woo, like, chef kiss, touch over everything. That's what I like about this film. It's John Woo. It's peak Woo in certain
Woo.
ways. And a lot of, if you talk to a lot of cinephiles, film buffs, fans, like that, people that have seen this film, most would agree. Like, a number of people would say that objectively, and I know that like that's not a true statement, but objectively, to some film fans of film, especially action film, Hardboiled is the best action film ever made, period. And there's a lot of people that will die on that sword, because like they've, we've had a lot of film since, and like you can look at like stuff like John Wick and stuff like that, like, but like Hardboiled, to me, I still feel is just the peak. Like, every single frame, every single scene, it has a meticulous craftsmanship to it that is unparalleled and unrivaled, I think, in cinema still today.
Yeah, there's something there is something truly special about it, considering it's practical effects too. We also have to consider that.
The practicality of it, like, all those effects are incredible.
So what did you hate?
God, that is the hardest question to ask me, because I just love this movie so much. So I'm trying to think of what I hate.
There could be nothing.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I would like to have gotten to know a bit more of some of the characters in the gang that like Tony Leung is initially with at the beginning. Like, what's his name? Uncle
Hui.
Uncle Hui. I would have liked to have known some of those players a little bit more, like especially like Meng Lo, the guy that I don't think we really talked about Meng Lo. I know we're running out of time.
The guy who survived.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he was another actor from the 70s. He was like Toad in Five Deadly Venoms, and
yeah.
I would have liked a little bit more time with some of those characters before they got killed off and like also came back to get revenge. But I know like the film was already running like over 2 hours, so there's so many good characters in this film that I would like to have known a bit more about. But obviously, and westerns are like that too. They're just full of faces rather than these characters, these kind of like almost like archetypes. But it's hard pressed for me to find something I don't like about this film. I don't like that there aren't more films like this that John Woo made in Hong Kong before moving on. I don't know. Damn.
That's a valid dislike though. I think that I share a similar. The thing I
Mhm.
hate most about this is that I think that um, Anthony Wong's villain, Johnny Wong,
Yeah.
is actually the most underdeveloped character of the core like main build actors. He's the most one dimensional of all the villains.
Yeah, he's just evil. And
Yeah,
like, that's kind of what is I like about him, but at the same time it's just like, yeah, give me like what is his motivation even, like why like yeah, he's despicable and awful, but like yeah, I never really thought about the fact that it's very one note. It's very
it's
like
very one note. He's just kind of there to be
yeah,
just to be the bad guy. And I feel like that.
yeah. It's a bit generic to a degree, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't
Um,
know if that's John Woo kind of struggling to make a cop movie over a
yeah,
gangster movie.
yeah.
But yeah, I felt like
But again, it's this entity that's coming in and taking control over, Uncle Hoy's way, which was like, criminal, but at the same time, he seemed like honorable and there's a graciousness to him, whereas this guy's coming in like full throttle, no values, just killing everyone to get what he wants, and it's maybe there's some commentary happening there too,
well,
like
just like during the duel with like Mad Dog and Tony, like they stop. They like there's I love when they like put their guns down.
oh, that's like such a moment.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's Mad Dog. Mad
Yeah,
Dog's the
Mad
guy with
Dog's
the
the
one
guy with the eye
eye.
patch.
One
yeah,
eye patch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they put their guns down and they're like, they're going to be like, hey, everybody can go. We're going to be honorable like villains. And then Johnny Wong comes in and just guns them all down. And then that's the moment when, Mad Dog's like, hey, you're not an honorable thief.
exactly. Yeah, and he
Very
turns
wuxia.
like
Very
yeah, that is
wuxia.
so wuxia. Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, that's the one thing I didn't like is that, most of the characters are super interesting. Like Mad Dog, very interesting character.
I would like a
He's
whole
very
movie
much a
about Mad Dog.
he's very
Like
much like a gray area character.
yeah,
Tequila, Tony, all of them are like that.
yeah,
Even like Pang, like the chief, is also not just like a very black and white character.
hmm
But Johnny Wong is very much he's bad and there's nothing else about it, right? So that's the
yeah.
thing I dislike
It's
because I
almost
feel like
cartoonish. It's almost cartoonish. He's
yeah.
cartoonishly evil.
So that's what I hate. That's my oh no, right?
Hmm.
The thing that I love most about this movie is actually the hospital scene, the 3-minute one take. The 3-minute single take when they're going through and they cross over, it's slow motion. They got their pistols, the shotgun, and they're literally clearing out rooms full of bad guys. And it's
Yeah,
all one
yeah, yeah.
masterful take. There are no nothing is hidden. There's guys flying through windows. The shots are very wide. At some points, the camera is completely static. And then when the camera moves, it's super steady. It is true, purely it's just pure chaos executed to perfection, like executed with precision, like I said
Yeah.
earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that scene. I love the hospital scene in general. The thing I liked, I really liked the way John Woo kind of gives every character unique weapons.
Oh yeah.
I really like that. And
Yeah.
I like how, for a lot of the movie, Tony Leung's character, he's got a chromed, like a nickeled out pistol. So it's very flashy, kind of like his
Yep.
character. Tequila's got the service revolver, which is really old school because
Yeah.
he's kind of like that old
It's like
school
Dirty
Western,
Harry.
Dirty Harry.
Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I love that. And then I particularly
Mad
love
Dog.
how Mad Dog. So this is where you mentioned Hard Target. I was like, oh, this is the
Got the
thing that I like.
same fucking
Same gun as the
yeah,
villain
it's
as
fucking
in Hard Target. So
yeah.
Drew, what did you think actually? Mad Dog, he pulls out, it's a Thompson Center Arms Contender, that single shot revolver.
I thought that shit was wild. And
That
he's
is a-
just like,
Like this.
That is a flare. That's a bit of a flare. Like this guy that's like this guy's doing it for the love of the sport, like he's like who pulls out a gun like that, that this guy's all about the stuff like man.
I think it's also interesting, like using weapons as pieces of storytelling and extensions of characters.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I did clock this where it's like, so when Mad Dog turns on Johnny and shoots him in the tummy,
Shoots him in
and
the tummy.
he
Such a dirty move
does.
too. It's so dirty to do that.
Yeah. And Johnny shoots him with, I believe, a striker.
The striker, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the striker is an extension of Johnny, because the striker is also sometimes called the striker street sweeper.
Yep.
So it is a shotgun designed to hold many rounds and be indiscriminate about its cone of fire. And so it is like
Okay.
Johnny,
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, Drew.
indiscriminate. It doesn't give a
Okay.
fuck.
You know what? I'll tell you one thing I don't like about this film, and you just mentioning that reminds me is, okay, there's a scene when their plan is to pretend that like uh Tony Long has been like taken hostage, or maybe it's Chow Yun Fat, and
Chow
they're
Fat's
trying to,
hostage. Yeah.
yeah, Chow Yun Fat is hostage, and their plan is for everyone to just like duck down, and then Chow Yun Fat runs, like uses a shotgun to like blast the other guys. I'm like, you're using a shotgun to like take these guys out in front of all these like hospital patients. That was the one scene where I was just like, what? That's your fucking plan? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
He's like, this time I'll load slugs.
Yeah.
It's the same. Well, actually, no, it's not quite the same, because you know when Tony executes all of Hoy's men at the end with a submachine gun,
Yeah.
there's like Johnny Wong's guys are also behind him,
Yeah.
behind them.
It's
But I don't think
indiscriminate
that
at
he
times,
cares.
yeah.
But he doesn't care though, because he's a cop. He doesn't like any of them. So I guess it doesn't apply. But Drew, that's actually super interesting.
Oh, do you know what something I also didn't like? I didn't like that.
Okay.
I didn't like that Tony Long turns around in the fire and is like, I'm also a cop. And then the next thing we see is he got his shit rocked by Johnny and is being drug out on all fours. You know?
Oh yeah, I guess there's
It's
a
like,
little bit of whiplash there.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just this badass, I'm also a cop. And then he's just a dog, being led out of the hospital.
It's
Like,
interesting
okay,
because
okay,
like
Tony.
John Woo was criticized before Hardboiled for sort of portraying like, bad, like,
Glorifying
criminals and stuff,
gangsters.
glorifying gangsters. So he's just like, I'm going to glorify the cops this time, but then he really puts them through the ringer, man. Like, it's like that, especially that scene. Like,
Yeah, I'm honestly, Drew, that observation you made about the street sweeper, that's super interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if it was intentional or not. It could have. Listen, I understand picking the striker for the vibes, but like, it just kind of resonated with me. Again, this idea that a firearm or a sword, is it can be an extension of yourself, and what you choose. What you choose shows what matters to you when it comes to how you conduct yourself. In this case, how you conduct yourself in violence. And yeah, I just thought it was a cool little thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, Drew, out of 5 doves, what would you rate Hardboiled? I'm not going to tell you what you rated Face Off until after.
I give it a 4.5 minus 0.5 just for, I think, slight pacing issues.
Okay. 4.5 doves out of 5. Brandon, what would you give this one?
I just feel like I have to give it 5 out of 5. Just, this is like John Woo, like the GOAT, like Hardboiled. Like, this is holy grail action cinema for me. Like, it doesn't get better than this. I got to give it 5. And I don't give that number out, too frequently, and no one really should. But this for me is like, yeah, this is. I used to rewatch scenes of this film. Like, before I would go to school, I'd eat breakfast with my like toast or cereal, and I would just like watch the warehouse scene for like 5 or 10 minutes before I had to go. And I'd sometimes come home from lunch, and I'd eat my lunch, and I would watch some of the hospital scene, later on. And like, that's how much I love this film. I could rewatch it any number of times, and still, like, it gets me every time. So I'm gonna give it 5. For me, this is a perfect film. And and maybe a perfect film doesn't exist, but like,
to you, it's a perfect film.
Yeah, for me, it's a perfect film. Just I love it.
To quote Andrew Lincoln of Walking Dead fame from Love Actually,
Yeah.
You would say, to me, you're perfect.
Hmm.
Um, so I would also give this a 5. It is one of the few
Yes. Yeah.
movies that I own multiple copies of.
Well, I can
Uh,
see that. Yeah. Thanks for showing me the collection. Like that's pretty
I've got
cool.
a shelf of my John Woos. I've got multiple copies of. So Hardboiled is the only John Woo movie that I own 2 legitimate copies of.
Wow.
Actually, I actually own 3 copies of The Killer.
Yeah.
Um, but one of my copies of The Killer is a Pacific Mall rip. Um,
Oh,
so
Pacific Mall. Shout out Pacific
yeah, shout
Mall.
out Bootleg Mall. Bootleg
Markham,
Mall.
like that is where that was the place to go to get
That's
these like
that's where I was able to get a lot of them when
yeah,
I was younger.
yeah.
There's no I didn't know
I
how to
grew up in
download and
Scarborough,
stuff.
so I'd get on the TTC, head out there, take the 57 Midland and get over there. Like they had the deals, man. There was that point where they started to get raided
They
every
got
once in a
rated like
while.
all the
And
time.
so, like, you had to go in instead of looking at the disc, you'd have to look at like a binder, and then if you wanted one, guy would have to go out to a car, come back, and come. It's like that.
Yep.
Those were the days, man. You had to get your shit. Like that was like,
Like quintessential like sort of like early internet days for folks in
yeah,
Toronto, for Asians in Toronto, was
yeah.
going to Pacific Mall. Like
But that was part of the fun, man. The hunt, the adventure of like traveling out to Pacific Mall. What kind of like films and for me, I don't speak Cantonese, and so I would have to like, is this one going to be subtitled, or is it going to have just Mandarin subtitles? Is there going to be English subtitles as well? And like, I'd have to talk to the shop owner, and they would be able to like help me find the ones that were, and like it was man, I miss those days. Like, and those shops still do exist.
they
There's
do.
still a few, like.
But for context for Drew and our audience, Pacific Mall is a Chinese mall here
It's
in
not
like
just
Toronto.
it's not just a Chinese mall. It's North America's largest indoor
Yes,
Chinese
yes.
mall.
I shouldn't understate it, but
Sorry.
you're right though. But in the early 2000s, it was like a haven for
Oh, yeah.
bootlegs, and
Bootlegs
there
and
would
bubble
be
tea. Bootlegs
bubble
and
tea
bubble tea.
bootlegs
Hell yeah.
and Gundam and candy
Yeah,
and
there's like Gundam and like
model cars
Korean
and the car
makeup
parts and
product.
stuff too.
Yeah,
But basically the mall is organized into streets. There are actually street names for the
yeah. Oh,
different
yeah.
aisles
That's
in the
right.
malls,
Yeah, yeah.
and every single street had rows and rows of bootleg DVD shops. And in the early
Tons.
2000s, like Asian families would go and be like, instead of going to like the Blockbuster or the Rogers to go rent a movie, it'd be like, let's go to P Mall and just buy some bootlegs.
But they
Why
would have
rent when you can
movies
buy?
of stuff that would like in theaters too. Some of those were probably just like cam rips or whatever. But like, man, they had so much good stuff.
You would
Like,
get everything there. And like you'd even go and there would be cops on their break shopping
the
bootlegs.
deals were
Oh,
like
yeah.
five. They used to be like 5 for 20 or something like that, right? So they were like five. They used to be like $10 each, and then they were $5 each, and then you could get 5 for 20, and then like there was like 5 for 10 at one point. Like it was
And you
crazy. Like,
used to have to go and the way you found the good quality ones was you would ask if they have the DVD 9 quality ones.
I
And
have a
DVD
stack of
9 meant
them.
it was like a rip.
Yeah, I have a stack of them over there too, and they were like legit VCDs, the video CD or whatever, and then there
Mhm.
was like obviously the counterfeit ones. A lot of them just came in like a little thin plastic sleeve with like a piece of paper printed around it, with the art on it. Like, yeah, it was pretty bare bones, but like you could, yeah, this was kind of like the only way to find Hong Kong films at that time, like.
Yeah. And I mean for kids of the diaspora, it was like a way to expose yourself to like movies from like the
Oh man,
motherland.
I saw so many movies back then, man. Like, and anime too, and like, did you ever go to Orbit Room, the arcade with
Oh
like
yeah.
the Japanese style arcade cabinets
Oh
with
yeah.
the lollipop joysticks? Oh my god. Because with those cabinets, it's like normally American arcades, you're standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody playing the game, but at Orbit Room, the guy's on the other side of the cabinet, like, and you don't even see the guy. It's such an interesting dynamic. That was the Japanese style arcade scenario. I would go there all the time and play Tekken 4, Tekken Tag Tournament, like Capcom versus SNK, Marvel versus Capcom. Like it was
My
like
God.
such a crazy arcade.
And this is something that a lot of like kids who grew up in Toronto would kind of experience. And for me, like from a movie perspective, that's why I felt like Turning Red was such an incredible movie.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure. And that really captures that quintessential Toronto Chinatown spirit and experience. Like I don't know, they really capture it very well in that film.
Yeah. So Hardboiled and John Woo's movies for me are really special because they remind me of that time. They remind me of buying bootlegs
Yeah.
with my family. They remind me of like going through these like awkward DVD menus to turn on the subtitles. They remind me of like my mom buying the DVD cases in bulk so we could put the paper slips over them so we could stick them in shelves and they could look nice.
Oh,
My parents
nice.
still have shelves of bootleg DVDs displayed as if they were legit.
Are you
in their
serious?
home.
Yeah,
I'll send you a picture. I'll send you a
Please
picture.
send me a picture.
I'll
Really
text
cool.
I'll text my mom to
Yeah. We should find it. Like, if I ever screen a John Woo film for Black Belt Cinema when these new Shout Factory things come out, we should find a way to collab on them or something like that. Like,
we should 100% collab. That'd be incredible. We definitely should have you on for another episode. So if there is a John Woo movie that you feel really strongly about joining us for, let me know. Like, we could do. We don't have any guests for the next season like mapped out. So.
Cool. Well, Hard Target was the second film that I ever screened at Review.
We have a guest for Hard Target already.
Oh, no worries, that's fine. Yeah, there's other ones though. Like, I love all the Better Tomorrow.
Oh, you know what? You haven't seen Wind Talkers recently.
Okay, sure. I could come on for Wind Talkers. Why not? Like,
you could do Wind Talkers, or you could do. We could do Better Tomorrow, which is perhaps one of his most iconic.
Better Tomorrow. I obviously prefer.
Let's do that one.
Okay, yeah. Put me on for Better Tomorrow. I would love to talk about that film.
Let's do that one.
I've got
because honestly, this has been. I mean, I really enjoyed when we had Annika on for our first episode. This is a very different vibe because, again, Hardboiled is a very different movie from Face Off.
Yeah.
Like, there are similarities in how John Woo directs them, the themes and the action, but Hardboiled is.
And it's interesting too because
so good.
I didn't rewatch Hardboiled before recording this episode with you guys because I've seen it so many times, and like, you know what I did instead was actually I listened to another podcast that I appeared on also talking about Hardboiled because it's called Thirsty for More Presents, and like I hosted a little like deep dive season where each season they do has a different theme, and I took over for 4 episodes to talk about specifically Chow Yun Fat because they were doing a lot of like seasons on like action hero type actors, and I was like, well, why not do Chow Yun Fat as an actor in the action canon? And so I took over for 4 episodes, and Hardboiled was I think the last episode that we talked about, and I re-listened to that one today, and the funny thing is a lot of the things that came up in that episode we didn't even like touch today naturally, which I think is interesting, and that it also shows like the spectrum of this film and the different ways to like interpret it. Like I don't know.
It's a special movie. It's a special movie.
Yeah.
And it's a special movie that deserves a special tagline. So the release tagline, Hardboiled, was in the West was, as a cop, he has brains, bronze, and an instinct to kill. Drew, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your gut John Who tagline for Hardboiled?
He's got babies and they gotta be quiet.
That's fucking really funny too. Okay, can I tell you my tagline?
I want to hear it.
Hard-boiled. It's not soft-boiled. No, hold on.
Hard, not soft-boiled.
My tagline is don't fuck with tequila.
Don't fuck with tequila.
Hell yeah.
Fuck with tequila. I don't have a good tagline for this film, folks.
It's just too good of a movie. I feel like Drew's always been the one who's good at coming up with that. Drew came up with John Who as like the podcast title to begin with.
Yeah, man.
I feel like if I were to do a tagline for this, I'd be like, I try to make it more Wuxia. I try to call it like the 2-gun god, or like 2 guns under heaven, something like that. Because I do love the line where it's like, give a guy a gun, thinks he's Superman. Give him 2, He's God.
Oh yeah, that is a good line.
Hard-boiled. This shit's never over easy.
Oh,
Yeah, I
that's
was gonna
good.
say,
That's good
something like that.
too.
Hard boiled. This isn't soft boiled.
This shit's never
This-
I
over
love
This
easy.
shit's
I
never
like
over
that.
easy. This shit's never over easy. I think that gets my vote. Actually,
I think that's the best one.
this shit's never over easy. All right, I think that's the
really
best one.
good.
Yeah, that's the one I wish I came up with.
Oh, that could be like that would be a fun sticker or something. This shit's never
I'll
over easy.
design one. This shit's
We'll-
never over easy.
That's so good.
Let's make that become like.
We'll do a collab. We'll do a collab or something.
I would love to do a John Who Asians Represent collab or something. Yeah.
Let's do it. Like I think
Let's
that'd be
do
so
it.
fun. We could even
Yo.
do a screening at the review or something.
Honestly,
but that
and
said, oh, go
one
ahead,
last
sorry.
thing, sorry. And John Woo was super cool because like I did that shirt and like John Woo shared that shirt design, and which means like he doesn't care. He doesn't own the rights to that film, you know. So I was like, oh, is he going to care that I'm like doing this bootleg of stuff? He did. He shared that stuff on his account.
That's cool.
So
That's sick.
yeah, we should do more John Woo stuff, you know. Yeah.
That's sick. We'll talk afterwards, but I think there's a ton of like cool shit that can be done. I would love to one day because Drew lives in St. Louis. But I would
Nice.
love
Yeah, I've been there before.
to one day do
Hell
like
yeah,
a collab where we screen like a John Woo movie and we record an episode live.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be super fun. Drew and I go to a lot of conventions, like we do the fan expos and we do Anime North and stuff. Might even be cool to arrange to do a panel or something.
I'll be up in Toronto in March. So
Oh yeah, let me know when you're around. We should connect. Yeah.
Yeah,
let's do it.
that'll be sick. But yeah, that said, as we wrap up, Brandon, where can people find you on the internet? Where can people find all the cool shit that you do?
I am at Black Belt Cinema on Instagram or Twitter. I also have a website, blackbeltcinema.ca, which is mostly just my Shopify page that sells all like the different like movie T-shirts and like merch stuff that I do. I'm trying to put all my posters up on there. I also edit a zine called Film Fuckers, but it's spelled film FVCKERS. It's spelled kind of a bit funny, but I just started a film scene. I've got 2 issues out. The first issue, the theme was hot takes, and the theme of issue 2 was hard media, which is a kind of physical media. And I'm working on issue 3 right now. I can't say the title of the theme yet, but that'll be out pretty soon. And my personal Instagram is Brandon's Limbs.
That's a good Instagram handle.
Brandon's Limbs. My name's Brandon Limbs, so kind of play on that. So I guess a little bit. So yeah, you can find me on that stuff mostly.
That's awesome. And Drew, I do plan on getting you the black version of this hard-boiled T-shirt. So I need to know what size you are, Drew, so I can order.
Oh, it's big.
Because we're not going to ship it to the States when I can get it locally here for.
You can also get
the
shirt on my web store too. I've got almost every size still in black at least.
Do you have this shirt as a poster?
You know what? I could print that as a poster. I don't know why I haven't yet.
I want this as I don't have a hard-boiled poster.
I'll print one for you, Daniel. Just maybe I'll print you one. You'll be the only one with the poster.
Oh my god, a one of one.
Holy shit.
Give you a one of one or one of two, unless you want one as well, Drew. Well, maybe I'll print 2.
Oh, I'm always down.
I'll print 3 because I probably want one too.
You probably want one too. But again, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on to the second episode of John Who. Honestly, I'm glad that we got to talk. I'm glad we finally got to schedule this. I look forward to future collaborations. I'm glad I could finally talk about Hardboiled with you, Drew, because the worst part about doing this podcast is the fact that we don't get to talk about the movie until we actually record. Yeah.
That's probably for the best, though. You really need to just contain the natural discussion within this channel. It's like when we were even like doing the pre-ramble before we actually started recording the episode. We're just like, okay, we can't start talking about this stuff. We got to save it for the episode. Save it
for Asians Rep, Drew and I waste a lot of material on when we're not recording. It's kind of a bummer sometimes. It's kind of a bummer. But that said, Brandon, thank you for joining us, and thank you, listeners /viewers, for tuning into this episode of John Who. We'll see you next time.